The golden beaches and sparkling waters of the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh usually attract tourists. But more recently, the town was filled with leaders from 19 African nations celebrating the benefits of 10 years of free trade.
Our intra-COMESA trade has increased from 3.2 billion on 31st October 2000 to 15.2 billion.
An impressive increase, but also one that could be improved upon, especially when compared to other emerging markets around the world.
Regional trade now in Africa is about 9%. This compares to about 58% in emerging Asia.
One reason for the below-par performance is a lack of involvement from the private sector. To overcome that, the continent must create a more business-friendly environment. And for that to happen, as the World Bank's Richard Scobie pointed out, there are plenty of issues that need to be addressed.
Unless there's a strong commitment to rule of law, enforcing contract provisions, eliminating unnecessary taxes, clamping down on any petty bribing or corruption in countries, the private sector will not come.
Yet delegates, even from countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo or DRC, suffering from half a century of brutal government exploitation, corruption and war, stress the continent was moving in the right direction.
I'm a firm believer that Africa is the next frontier for development in the world. Precisely because we've gone through hell, we've learned from our mistakes, and we are now bound for real development.
The continent is changing, and international institutions have noticed the difference. Africa's attitude to foreign investment is undergoing a sea change.
I've been in Africa very recently to some of the countries, and I found that a different mindset, very open now to foreign investment. And they think that their interest is in cooperating with the private and international sector.
Yet the private sector cannot function efficiently without reliable infrastructure, which is sadly lacking across much of Africa and is a key factor holding back the region.
The World Bank's recent study identified an annual financing requirement of $93 billion a year for every year over the decade.
The World Bank estimates that some countries, such as the DRC, need to spend as much as 37% of their annual GDP to build solid infrastructure. But not everyone agrees.
That is absolute nonsense. Why don't they write about the 7 billion infrastructure that the Chinese are building in DRC? That is more positive.
There were no high-level Chinese organizations at the forum, but China's influence in the continent is very much apparent. China now imports over $50 billion of goods a year from Africa, 80% of which, according to Chatham House, are mineral products, all of which require a developed infrastructure for their transportation.
I would say that the drive to exploit the natural resources will certainly stimulate a lot of infrastructure development. But a lot of that is captive infrastructure, dedicated rail lines between mines and the ports.
And infrastructure has been a prime driver of recent economic growth.
The opportunities are phenomenal. As I said today, we've seen growth, basically tenfold growth in our private infrastructure activities in the past 4 years.
The forum's host country, Egypt, still growing at 5% despite the crisis, has already demonstrated that economic reforms and trade liberalization can boost both growth and FDI. But choosing the right projects is crucial.
We have to be very careful in attracting investment, because it is very easy when you have resource-based economies. You'll see investments in such resources, in extraction and mining and oil and natural gas. And then you have imbalanced growth.
Instead, the minister believes, African countries should require international investors to help develop the infrastructure surrounding their investments, which is already happening in the agricultural sector.
In many African countries, now they are required to pave roads, invest in logistics.
Other delegates argued that even with a more developed infrastructure, the need is there for greater regional, political and economic integration.
Why we are doing it as regions is because the economies of scale. If you invest in 11 countries, in 19 countries, you are better off than somebody who is investing in one country.
According to the Secretary General, the region should, ultimately, aspire to the creation of an organization more closely resembling the European Union.
It is a model for COMESA. It's a model for integration. It's the only thing that works.
Freedom of capital.
Minister Mohildin believes the next step COMESA should take is the creation of an internal investment zone, where investors will be treated alike in all participating countries.
It's not just going to be about legal framework, it's going to be facilitating promotion of joint projects, of especially the ones with regional dimension. It's going to be facilitating the dispute settlement procedures, which is one of the main issues of concern when you are doing business with some investors from abroad.
The good news is that Africa is aware of the issues that need to be addressed if it is to prosper. The question remains, though, if the political will is strong enough to make those changes happen.